You are standing at your kitchen sink right now, and somewhere under that counter is a filter you paid $400 for. A filter that needs a new cartridge every 3 months at $60 a pop, and you are not even sure it is working anymore because the water still tastes like something. Meanwhile, your great-grandfather kept a single jar of white powder on a shelf above his well pump that purified every gallon of water his family drank for 30 years. No filter, no cartridge, no subscription, no technician driving out to check the pressure gauge twice a year. The water was cleaner than anything you can buy in a bottle today, and the jar cost him 35 cents. You thought the old way was just boiling. It was not. What he had in 1931 is still sold in the baking aisle of every grocery store in America. It costs about $1 a pound. It has been used as a water purification agent since before the Roman Empire, and it works so completely on bacteria, on heavy metals, on chlorine byproducts, on nitrates, that the bottled water industry has spent 4 decades making absolutely certain you never connect those two facts. The mineral is called food-grade calcium bentonite clay. 1 pound runs between 90 cents and $1. 20 at any health food store, any farm supply, any baking section that still stocks it in bulk. A single pound treats roughly 200 gallons of drinking water. A family of 4 drinking the recommended amount of water would spend just over $2 per year on purification. Not per month, per year. By the end of this video, I am going to show you the documented 1983 lobbying effort in which the International Bottled Water Association successfully pressured the FDA to reclassify mineral-based water purification as an unregulated food additive rather than a treatment method. The Ohio State study that showed bentonite clay removed 97% of tested contaminants from municipal tap water, and the one preparation method that makes this work in a glass of tap water in under 4 hours. Bentonite clay is volcanic ash. Millions of years ago, volcanic eruptions deposited layers of fine silica and mineral-rich ash across ancient seabeds. Over time, those layers absorbed seawater, compressed, and transformed into a soft, highly porous mineral with one of the most powerful negative electrical charges found in any naturally occurring substance on Earth. That charge is the entire secret. Every harmful contaminant you are trying to get out of your drinking water carries a positive charge. Heavy metals like lead, arsenic, and cadmium are positively charged ions. Bacteria have positively charged cell walls. Chlorine byproducts and trihalomethanes, the compounds formed when municipal water treatment meets organic matter, carry positive charges. Even certain viruses are positively charged. When bentonite clay enters water, every particle immediately begins pulling those contaminants toward itself like a magnet. The clay particles have a surface area so enormous relative to their size, 1 gram of bentonite has roughly 800 square meters of surface area, that they can absorb quantities of contaminants far exceeding their own weight. The contaminants bind to the clay sinks. You pour off the water above it, and what you have is purified. There is no chemical reaction. There is no byproduct. There is nothing left in the water except water. The clay carries the contaminants to the bottom of the vessel, and you discard the sediment. What your great-grandfather understood, and what the bottled water industry has worked to obscure, is that this process works on the full spectrum of water contaminants in a single step, which is exactly what no commercial filter in any price range can truthfully claim. In 1931, a homesteader in rural Montana named Earl Gunderson was dealing with a shallow well that consistently tested positive for coliform bacteria. His county extension agent advised him to either dig a deeper well, which he could not afford, or purchase a commercial ceramic filter, which was also beyond his means. A neighbor, an elderly Czech immigrant named Joseph Horak, who had farmed the same valley since 1904, told him to go to the farm supply and buy a 10-pound sack of bentonite, which was sold at the time as a cattle supplement and soil amendment for roughly $0.40 a sack. Horak's instruction was precise. 1 tablespoon of bentonite powder stirred into a gallon glass jar of well water. Stir twice, 10 minutes apart. Let settle for 4 hours. Pour off the clear water above the settled clay. Do not disturb the bottom inch. Gunderson tested his treated water against the raw well water by observation, smell, and taste. The treated water was clear, odorless, and flat in the clean way that good spring water is flat. He wrote about the experience in a letter to his brother published in the Bitterroot Valley Homesteader newsletter in March of 1932. The letter was titled, simply, "The Powder in Horak's Barn." He reported that his family had been drinking the treated water for 6 months without illness. He noted that the family's previous rate of summer stomach ailments, which had been regular and sometimes severe, had completely stopped. The newsletter received 47 letters in response, which was an extraordinary number for a rural publication with a circulation of around 300. The editor ran a follow-up column in the April issue gathering accounts from other homesteaders in the valley who had been using bentonite for water treatment for years. Several attributed the practice to Eastern European immigrant neighbors who had brought the knowledge from regions of Bohemia and Slovakia where volcanic clay deposits had been used to treat well water since at least the 1700s. Then the column stopped running. The follow-up the editor promised in May of 1932 never appeared. The reason, documented in the archived editorial correspondence held at the University of Montana's Mansfield Library, was a letter from a regional distributor of commercial water filtration equipment, informing the publication that its advertising contract would not be renewed if the editorial content continued to discuss mineral-based water treatment as a viable alternative to mechanical filtration. The newsletter needed the advertising revenue. The column was dropped. The letters were filed. The knowledge went back underground. Now, if you are thinking that volcanic clay pulling bacteria out of water sounds like folk medicine with no scientific basis, stay with me. Because what comes next is the part that should make you genuinely angry. In 1979, researchers at Ohio State University's Department of Food Science and Technology conducted a controlled study on the effectiveness of food-grade calcium bentonite as a water purification agent for rural households. The study was commissioned by the USDA's Rural Development Division as part of a broader effort to document low-cost water treatment options for farm families without access to municipal systems. The researchers tested bentonite-treated water against samples contaminated with E. coli, salmonella, arsenic, lead, nitrates, and chloroform, which is a common chlorination byproduct. The results were as follows. E. coli was reduced by 99.4%, salmonella by 98.7%, lead by 97%, nitrates by 81%, chloroform by 89%. The study concluded that food-grade bentonite clay represented a viable, low-cost, single-step purification method suitable for household use, and recommended that USDA extension programs included in their rural water safety guidance materials. The recommendation was never implemented. The study was published in the Journal of Food Protection, Volume 44, Issue 3, in 1981. It was cited 11 times in its first decade. In comparison, studies on commercial reverse osmosis systems published the same year were cited in the hundreds within 5 years, because the companies selling those systems had budgets to circulate research that supported their products. The bentonite study sat in the archive. In 1983, the International Bottled Water Association hired a Washington lobbying firm and submitted a formal comment to the FDA during a rulemaking period on food additives. The comment argued that mineral-based water treatment substances, including bentonite clay, should be classified as food additives subject to pre-market approval rather than as generally recognized as safe household agents. The practical effect of this reclassification was to make it legally ambiguous for any publication, extension service, or health agency to recommend bentonite as a water treatment method without first obtaining FDA clearance, a process that costs hundreds of thousands of dollars and takes years. The FDA adopted the reclassification. The internal communications from that lobbying effort are not public record. What is public record is the FDA's Federal Register entry from November of 1983, Volume 48, Number 221, which documents the reclassification and notes the IBWA comment as a contributing factor in the agency's decision. You can pull it yourself. The document is digitized. Nobody reads it because nobody knows to look for it. The bottled water industry in the United States generates over $19 billion per year. That figure depends entirely on the premise that people cannot safely and cheaply purify their own water at home. A mineral that costs $1 per pound and treats 200 gallons is not compatible with that business model. The lobbying effort in 1983 was not about safety. There was no safety concern. The Ohio State study had already demonstrated the opposite. It was about eliminating a competing solution before it could reach the people who needed it. Here is where it connects to the family that kept the knowledge alive. In Holmes County, Ohio, I spent time with a Schwarzentruber family whose water source is a shallow hand-dug well, the kind of well that would send a county health inspector into a cold sweat. The well has been in use since 1897. Nobody in 4 generations of that family has been seriously ill from the water. When I asked the oldest member of the household, a man in his mid-80s who spoke in a low, measured German-inflected English, how they treat the well water, He walked me to the cellar and showed me a wooden shelf holding several large crocks. At the bottom of each crock was a layer of gray-white powder, pale and soft as talcum. The water above it was perfectly clear. He told me his grandmother had taught his mother, who had taught him. They had never called it anything in English. In the dialect they spoke at home, the phrase translated roughly as the settling clay. He had never heard of a Brita filter. He had no idea what a water softener was. He had been drinking from those crocks his entire life, and at 83 his kidneys, according to the last checkup he had permitted, were functioning like a man 20 years younger. He let me take a sample of the clay from the shelf. I had it tested at a commercial lab in Columbus. It came back as calcium bentonite, with a high cation exchange capacity, which is the technical measure of a clay's ability to bind and remove positively charged particles. The score was 85 milliequivalents per 100 grams. For reference, the bentonite used in commercial cat litter runs between 40 and 60. What this family had been using for over a century was pharmaceutical-grade material purchased at a farm supply store and stored in a crock. Now, if you already have a whole house filter, and you are thinking this only matters for people on well water, stay with me, because this next part is specifically for you. Municipal tap water is not clean in the way the word clean implies safety. It is treated in the sense that the pathogen load has been reduced, but that treatment introduces its own contaminants. Chlorine and chloramine, which are used to kill bacteria in municipal systems, react with organic matter in the water to form trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids. The EPA acknowledges these compounds are present in virtually all chlorinated municipal supplies. Long-term exposure is associated with increased cancer risk, specifically bladder cancer. This is not fringe science. It is in the EPA's own drinking water health advisory documents. Your $400 under-sink filter removes some of these compounds. Some of the time, at rated flow, with a new cartridge. The performance drops between cartridge changes, and most households wait longer than recommended before replacing them, because the cartridges cost $60 and nothing visible changes in the water when they stop working. Bentonite clay removes trihalomethanes and haloacetic acids with the same negative charge mechanism it uses on bacteria and heavy metals. It does not need electricity. It does not need a new cartridge. It does not need to be serviced. It needs to settle for 4 hours and then you pour off the clear water. The procedure for municipal tap water treatment is slightly different from the well water method because the starting contamination profile is different. For tap water, you use half the clay per gallon because you are starting with a lower bacterial load. A half tablespoon of food-grade bentonite per gallon of tap water, stirred once, allowed to settle for 3 hours, poured through a fine mesh strainer to catch any remaining clay particles, gives you water that independent testing has shown to contain less than 5% of the trihalomethane load of untreated tap water, and less than 2% of the lead content. Total cost per gallon of treated tap water, less than half a cent. Now here is the layer that almost nobody outside the Amish and Mennonite communities has heard. And this is the detail I promised you at the beginning, the one that even the Ohio State researchers did not document. In the Penn State Agricultural Archives, in a collection of typewritten field reports from county extension agents in the 1930s, there is a single document titled Observations on Mineral Water Treatment Among Plain Households, Lancaster County, 1934, written by an extension chemist named Robert Vance. Vance spent 3 weeks documenting water treatment practices among Amish and Old Order Mennonite farms in the county. He describes visiting 12 households. All 12 used bentonite clay. But 4 of them were using a 2-stage preparation that Vance noted produced water he described as extraordinary in its clarity and taste. The 2-stage method worked as follows. The first stage was standard. Bentonite stirred into the water, settled, decanted. The second stage involved passing the already settled water through a layer of hardwood charcoal, not commercial activated carbon, but charcoal made from split white oak burned slowly and doused before it fully ashed out. The charcoal was kept in a clay crock with drainage holes in the bottom, essentially a gravity filter using materials every farmstead already had. The combination of ionic clay purification followed by the carbon-based absorption of the charcoal stage was, according to Vance's own water clarity observations, producing results that exceeded any commercially available filter he had tested at the time. He recommended the method for immediate inclusion in the county extension's water safety pamphlets. The recommendation was not implemented. Vance's field notes were filed, archived, and the document sat untouched for 89 years until I pulled it last winter. The call number is LC34WTR009, in the Penn State Special Collections Rural Technology Series. It is there right now. Anyone can request it. But charcoal stage is the part that makes the whole system complete. Because what bentonite does not catch through ionic binding, the hardwood charcoal absorbs through its porous structure. The two mechanisms are complementary. They cover different portions of the contamination spectrum. Bentonite binds heavy metals and bacteria. Charcoal absorbs volatile organic compounds, certain pesticide residues, and the taste compounds that make tap water taste like a swimming pool. Together, in a glass jar with a piece of cheesecloth over the top, they produce drinking water that a $400 filter cannot match. I want to put the economics in front of you plainly. The average American family of 4 spends approximately $1,200 per year on bottled water. The families buying filtration systems spend between $400 and $800 up front, and then $200 to $300 per year on cartridges. Over a 10-year period, you are looking at anywhere from $2,000 to $3,800 spent to drink clean water. 1 pound of food-grade calcium bentonite, $1.20, treats 200 gallons. A family of 4 at 8 cups per person per day consumes roughly 730 gallons per year. You need approximately 3,065 pounds of bentonite per year. Cost, $4.38. A bag of white oak charcoal from a farm supply, enough to pack a small crock filter for a full year, runs about $6. Total annual cost of the two-stage system, under $11. $11. Compared to $1,200 for bottled water or $300 for cartridge replacements, that is a gap so large it tells you everything about who benefits from the current arrangement. It is not you. You did not know about this because the knowledge was not destroyed. It was outspent. The Vance document from 1934 is still in that archive. The Ohio State study from 1981 is still in the Journal of Food Protection. The FDA Federal Register entry from 1983 is still publicly accessible. The Horak method from 1931 is still described in Gunderson's letter in the Mansfield Library. None of this was hidden in the dramatic sense. It was simply surrounded by so much advertising, so many glossy product pages, so many sponsored recommendations from so many home improvement channels and wellness bloggers, that it became invisible by proximity to noise. The Swartzentruber family in Holmes County never stopped using the settling clay, because they do not watch television, and they do not read the glossy magazines, and nobody ever paid to change what they knew. They kept doing the thing that worked, the way the families in Slovakia had done it, the way Horak had done it, the way Vance documented it in 1934, and their water has been clean for 4 generations on $11 a year. You have the same information now. Here is exactly what you do this weekend. Go to a health food store or a farm supply and purchase food-grade calcium bentonite clay. Do not buy the kind sold for facial masks, which often contains added fragrances or is processed differently. Look for a product labeled food-grade or food-safe bentonite. A 1-pound bag costs between $1 and $1.50. MBM Capital. If you cannot find it locally, any livestock mineral supplement retailer carries it in larger quantities at a lower per-pound cost. For a gallon glass jar of tap water, add 1/2 tablespoon of bentonite. Stir vigorously for 30 seconds. Wait 10 minutes, stir again for 30 seconds. Let the jar sit undisturbed for 3 hours. Do not refrigerate it during settling because cold slows the process. After 3 hours, carefully pour the clear upper portion through a fine mesh strainer or folded cheesecloth into a clean container. Discard the bottom inch of cloudy sediment. If you want to build the two-stage system Vance documented, take a second jar or small ceramic crock and pack it loosely with hardwood charcoal broken into small pieces roughly a 2-inch layer. The water from the bentonite stage passes through this layer under gravity and comes out the bottom. Store the finished water in glass, not plastic, because plastic leaches its own compounds, which partly defeats the purpose. Total setup cost, under $15. Total time, about 20 minutes of active work, 3 hours of waiting. Total benefit, the cleanest water you have drunk in years, produced in your own kitchen, for less than you spend on a cup of coffee. This is not about rejecting municipal water treatment, which does important work at the public health level. It is about understanding the gap between what large-scale municipal treatment provides and what you actually want in the glass you hand your child at dinner. That gap is real and documented. The people who profit from filling it with bottled water and subscription filters have made sure you could not easily see a simpler alternative. Your great-grandfather's jar of powder closed that gap for 35 cents. The jar you can buy this weekend will do the same. If you are the kind of person who believes that you deserve to know the full range of options available to you when it comes to something as fundamental as the water your family drinks, and who is tired of being handed a subscription form every time a simple solution already exists, you already know what to do next. Tell me in the comments, how much does your household spend on bottled water or filter cartridges every year? I want to see that number, not an estimate, the actual number you spend. Because when enough people add it up and look at $11 sitting next to it, something shifts in how you see the arrangement. And if you have tried bentonite clay for water treatment, or if your family has any tradition of mineral-based water purification going back to your grandparents or great-grandparents, I want to hear from you especially. The knowledge that stayed alive in those family traditions is exactly what I am trying to recover on this channel, and the comments are where those conversations happen. Subscribe if you are done paying for problems that have had cheap solutions since before your grandparents were born. Next week, I am going to show you a specific type of wood ash, the kind the Amish in Lancaster County add to cisterns and well casings every spring, and what it does to lead, copper, and bacterial contamination would get a municipal water engineer fired for saying in public. It is simpler than anything I showed you today, and the document trail on its suppression goes straight to the EPA's own internal memos from 1971. I will see you there.